It's just, we have an opportunity here, first of all, to promote the field of instructional design in a way that it's never been promoted. I finished my PhD in 1989 when it was very much a boutique. There were 3 doctoral programs in the world, and I graduated from Indiana University, which was um, one of the top 3, I guess. But 85% of PhD graduates came from Indiana University. And it gave me, the way it was approached gave me just a rich background. I am 60 and I'm still learning and growing my practice. The field has changed tremendously, and I have changed. I've changed my strategy to, I don't want to be a hands-on developer. So I'm a certified performance technologist through the International Society for Performance Improvement. I work with change management. So I work where curriculum and organizational initiatives that must get results and change management live. And so that gives me somewhat of a unique perspective. There are a lot of people, this is a great lesson for designers who want to approach, if I go to another instructional design meeting where their project is failing and they're talking about colors, that's my clue. They're not focusing on what are we trying to accomplish? How big of a change is it? What are the gaps we have to fill all the way up and down the line? And instructional designers need to have that line of sight because we're the only ones who do that. See, we do a society, we are a service that does a societal work. If you work with economically disadvantaged and underemployed adults and help them gain and retain employment, you're buying shoes for their children who never had a new pair of shoes. If you're working with an organization who is unable to get this group of people, say a company needs to move their software production to the cloud rather than on premises, everybody in that company has to change the way they think about their work, the way they do their work, the way they interact with clients. What good looks like has changed. But if you can't help that company pivot, then they will not survive. And then all those individuals go home and can't buy their children's shoes. So you and I see the same thing. When you know who Roger Kaufman is, Kaufman. So I was exposed to his work. In fact, I heard him speak this week at a conference. But I was exposed to his work, and he talked about the societal element. And at first, I thought, Roger, you're crazy. We don't do that. We just do our good within this little bubble. But it's not true. And the pandemic gives us an opportunity to shine because we know we are one of the few professional groups with the depth and breadth of skills to help others bridge this. It's like the earth opened up in front of them. How can they be successful now? We can help them do that. It is a gift and it's a privilege. If you think of it in terms of performance improvement, you're trying to solve a skill gap problem along with a preference problem, along probably with bandwidth. So you cannot do it using that individual approach model that is typical of teaching and learning centers and traditional universities. You might have to create a series of courses that professors then have to take, from here's basic, here's how you put things in the learning management system, those very fundamental things that if you don't want them to practice on the students, if you want to give them a heads up and help them move quicker, you're going to have to scale that model quickly. Teaching professors classes that they maybe must take, or short modules of classes, might be one way to do that, as well as, of course, putting together guides. But in my experience, professors typically don't read technical manuals, which is what they would see this as. So for them, being able to experience an online course as well as take one might be a beneficial strategy. It's very hard to be a good online teacher if you've never experienced education in the seat of the student. because it's all you can imagine. It is um, it's a paradigm shift to teach online. You shift the burden to the materials, your role changes. And for many faculty, they don't have any, their classroom training isn't good. All they do is talk. So now you're taking people who don't have the skills to be effective in a contemporary classroom and trying to have them do that in a way that's mediated by tools, and that's a challenge as well. One of the challenges is really the diffusion and adoption of online learning. I mean, the professors are struggling, and it's not just that it's there and within their reach. They really have to change their mindset and their beliefs. And it's very hard to do if they've never experienced it and they've never seen, it's like teaching music and you don't have your students listen to beautiful music. You just say, this is how you create music, and you let them sit down and plunk away one thing at a time. But you have to be able to see and envision how that is and how it can work. So that's a big job. It's not just giving people information here. It is really supporting that change management effort on the part of the university and on the part of the professor. And if they do see it as just temporary to get through the crisis, many will not invest because they just have to get through a couple of semesters and then it'll go back. And I personally don't think, I think the student expectations will change. I think the marketplace will change. So, my advice to you, and I've had this conversation, I think, with about 10 different groups this week, is really to think strategic and broadly and then put your projects in that context. Looking at, you're not really solving a temporary problem. It's a long-term thing, and it's the shift is not just providing information, because that information is there, it's been there, but it's helping people move those strategies into their comfort zone. And I think the people who win at this game are the people who are going to be able to help the faculty with that aspect of it, not just give them really great information and support. The challenge is the lessons they learn when it's stuffed in, and the successes that they do not have. The quickest way to get someone to change is to give them something they can be successful with. And that's the challenge here again, is getting faculty to really reimagine the content that they're so comfortable with. I find it much easier to teach a class I've designed for online than one I used to teach face to face, and there are things I like to do, trying to find the equivalent. If you design for online, it's so much easier. I would just try to expand it to making sure that change management is addressed. Make sure you're linking to a long-term strategy for sustainability. And, there's a faculty experience to consider. There's the student experience as well, because um, I'm very committed to the student experience in everything that we do. And as an instructional designer, I believe we need to be advocates for whoever our learners are. There's a lot of information about using the tools, but the tools are just, and that's one of the things that students are usually very excited about, tools and the strategies associated with them, as opposed to what you can accomplish. So this is a great opportunity to get students focused on beyond the tool. What are we trying to accomplish? What are 3 ways we could do that? What are other things we could do? If a faculty member really is resistant to X, what's another way? Well, this is, like I said, that human piece of the challenge in mind is a great lesson for students too. That's a lesson I learned very much the hard way in my work with clients, is that it's hard to get people to change. It's very hard. If it were easy, we'd all be within 5 pounds of our ideal weight, because we know what we need to do, but it's hard. This is my home office. I have a beautiful office. When we bought this home 2 years ago, we bought it because I work from home. And I watch all these people. I have managed people around the world and teams around the world. And I watch all these people who've been doing it for 10 minutes publish, this is how you do it. And I have to tell you, everybody has a voice, everyone can publish. That's lovely. But you need to find people who have been doing it a while, even for small things. So I have been a Girl Scout leader for years. And a friend of mine who is very involved in Girl Scouts said, I want to do a sing along. I said, let's try it with Zoom. Well, because of the way voice is carried over the internet, you can't all sing together, right? But we had to experiment to learn. And at first, I found YouTube videos where choir directors had said, here's what you do at home. I researched it, you do these settings. But it didn't work, but the YouTube video is still out there. So my only advice to you is to find those pockets of people who had a head start and find what they have learned, the lessons learned from actual experience, rather than the people who are just learning. It's like asking a bride how marriage is. You get a lovely, lovely sentiment, but they don't know anything about what marriage really is. Asking a baby what childhood is about. So it's one thing if they could sit down and say, oh, look, this is happening. I can be strategic about it. But when people most need to be strategic, they are not. And that's what I tried to tell myself. At first, I planned, I saw this coming. I listened to the guidance from the World Health Organization. So we had things in the home. We were preparing. My family was preparing. But I only prepared for a few months. And now I'm saying, okay, Dawn, now take a step back. What do I need to do for the business long term? How does it affect me? And so I'm playing with some things I used to do. I'm doing a facilitation for a curriculum redesign for a faculty at a community college in Oregon, and we're doing it all online, where we'd normally be in a room for 3 days. So, I need new tools. I need new things. I need more skills, different skills. And it's going to be long term, so I'm investing. But it's hard to step back and say this isn't just there's some things that are going to change and stay changed. And you, my dear, are pushing our field forward. Thank you so much. Because instructional design is going to be the hottest job in the world, if it wasn't already.